We're going to go ahead and get started with this presentation. Great. So like I said, I'm Grant Saum, the Regional Communications Manager, and this is the Louisiana State Support Program Overview. So back in 1966, the Cotton Research and Promotion Program was formed. This kind of came together to combat the synthetic fibers situation as far as different things like polyester and those type things to make sure that we're driving the demand for cotton. So it's separated into two different arms, I guess you would say, and the Cotton Board is based out of Memphis, Tennessee. So you heard from everybody on the Cotton Board team, and we're responsible to actually collect the assessment from the producers and the gens. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit in the next slide. But like I said, we're responsible for those. And we also administer the program. So we're kind of that in-between person between the Cotton Incorporated and the Cotton Board. And I guess one of the funnest things to do, or the thing I'm looking the most forward to, is to communicate with the stakeholders or the producers that are out there and really get to know them and just make sure that they know what's going on, such as what we're doing this morning with the promotion program, and make sure that you understand where those dollars are going towards. So like I said, we contract out to the Cotton Incorporated, and they're the ones that actually conduct the research, as well as kind of promoting and driving the demand for cotton, and making sure that they're paying attention to the trends and different things like that, as far as big box stores or different types of brands that can drive the demand to make sure that we keep the profitability and the pricing up for cotton. Like I said, they create the demand and profitability. So they make sure they take all those research and numbers and things like that to make sure that the price is driven in the way that we'd like for it to be. So we are governed by the USDA, so we do not do any kind of policy or things like that. There's other organizations within the cotton industry that really drive that. So the USDA, we kind of run what we're going to post and things like that by them to make sure that we're staying in line and making sure that we're all on the common ground as far as promoting the cotton research program. So like I said earlier, we do collect a per bale assessment on all upland cotton that is ginned and produced here in the US. And I guess this would be the assessment that you all are the most familiar with. And that makes up 53% of what we collect is what's in the United States. And then the other 47% is actually just like the in-state, it would be put on each bale coming into the US, or anything that has to do with cotton being imported in also has that assessment. So that's something, I guess, newer compared to the producer assessment, but has really helped kind of stabilize the budget and drive the money to be able to put that on the importing products. Something we do pride ourselves in is the 99% compliance rate, so higher than any other commodity that's out there as far as the checkoff dollars or as far as the assessments. So really excited about that, and that also helps kind of stabilize the budget and make sure that we kind of can keep up with how much money we have for research, as well as driving demand and things like that. So the 2021 budget has decreased by $8 million from 2020, but we're still operating on an $80 million budget, and we can still do most of the research and things like that. So what we're going to be covering today is going to be the Cotton Incorporated State Research Program. So 7.5% of all of your assessments collected in each state goes to the localized research projects, such as what we're going to see today. So each one is allocated due to how much production is in the state. So obviously, if we have more cotton in a certain area, more funding dollars will be going to those parts of the country. But also just keep in mind that your assessment is still staying localized through this program. So it is determined by a committee in each state, which we'll see who's on the committee here in just a second. but it's made up of the Cotton Board, Cotton Incorporated, as well as researchers and CPOs from across the cotton industry. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them or myself, and be glad to kind of go a little bit more in depth with you. The research and promotion projects are managed by Cotton Incorporated Ag Research and staff members. So we'll hear from Ryan here in just a second, and he'll dive into it. Here are the committee members. So it's made up of the Cotton Incorporated as well as the Cotton Board members or staff or board members. So if you see anybody that's kind of in your neck of the woods, you might reach out to them and kind of ask them a few questions, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of these people, and they should be able to kind of give you any further information that you might need. So thank you for everybody that's on here, and they play an integral part of getting the promotion program continued to go. So kept it short and sweet today, but that's kind of the overview of the program. If you have any questions, here's my contact info. Feel free to give me a shout or shoot me an email. I'll be glad to answer any questions. And from that, I think we're going to move on to Ryan, and he's going to go in depth on some of the research projects. Ryan, you going to take, there you go. You're on mute, I believe.
That better?
There you go.
There you go.
Appreciate it. So as Grant mentioned, I'm Ryan Kurtz with Cotton Incorporated. My day job, I'm the entomologist with Cotton Incorporated, but I'm also the liaison to the various state support committees. So through that, well, for the Mid-South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, and Tennessee. So I'm just going to kind of go through a high-level overview of the projects that were funded for 2020. For those of you that are on the committee, this will be a condensed version of the updates that you all received at the last meeting in December. Just really giving a high-level overview for those people that aren't on the committee to have a better understanding of how your funds are being spent in Louisiana. So here we've got just a brief overview of how projects are selected and the accountability process for each project. So the Louisiana State Support Committee sets the research priorities and then requests proposals from the university research scientists. Once they're submitted, Cotton Incorporated staff, myself and my counterparts in weed science, agronomy, breeding, we review the projects for scientific merit, but ultimately the State Support Committee's members are the ones who vote on the projects and have complete discretion on which projects are funded. All our projects are funded on an annual cycle, but the State Support Committee recognizes the need that multi-year projects are needed in research. And so once a project is funded for a given year, it's usually funded for at least 2, if not 3 years following that. So in terms of accountability, we require quarterly and annual reports to be submitted on each project that are reviewed by staff. The reports are available to any of the State Support Committee members that would like to see them. And as I mentioned, in-person presentations are made. Louisiana typically has one meeting a year that occurs sometime in either November or December to get overview and results from the previous year project, and then vote on the projects for next year. Looking at funding, funding is set by the amount of production from each state. As Grant mentioned, 7.5% of what's contributed to the overall research and promotion program goes back to the state. It's an Olympic average based on the previous 5 years. And in 2020, Louisiana had $65,000 in funding. And so this is not including core program funds, which also are in Louisiana, which I think in 2020, we probably had somewhere around 9 or 10 additional projects that were funded in Louisiana out of core funds. And those funds are typically set aside for projects that are either regionally or nationally important and are managed by Cotton Incorporated staff, myself, and my counterparts in the other disciplines. I do also want to point out, if you want to keep track of which projects are being funded in your state, and you can also look in your surrounding states if you're interested. If you Google Cotton Inc. State Support, it'll take you right to the link that takes you to the state support page. And you can click on a state and it'll show you all the projects that are funded within that state. Another thing before I get started, just want to draw your attention to is the Cotton Cultivated website. If you were on a little bit earlier, you heard Shelley mention in the weather video. That's where we've contracted with Agrible as part of Nutrien to create a cotton belt specific weather video, and Cotton Cultivated is where you find that. It's updated weekly on Thursdays. And there's also a wealth of other information on there about cotton production that you might find valuable. So looking into the projects that were funded, I'm not going to go through the titles and the PIs in detail on this, because I'm going to go through each project. But projects were funded covering the range of issues to Louisiana cotton producers, from insect management, weed management, agronomy, economics, irrigation, diseases. We covered a whole lot, even a couple of breeding trials. So jumping right into the specific projects, the first one is on cotton production economics. The objective of this project is to estimate the production costs and economic returns of alternative crop production systems in Louisiana and evaluate the economic competitiveness of cotton with the whole farm mixed crop enterprise. So as everybody knows, the current economic conditions, production practices, variety choices, market forces, farm program changes, all of this is combining to create risk and uncertainty. And this project is really looking at understanding the impacts of how these forces might impact whole farm net returns. And it's critical in helping you guys manage and inform your crop production and farm management decisions. This project puts out a whole lot more, but this is just a high-level overview of some of the things that occurred in 2020. Detailed enterprise budgets were made available to growers for corn, cotton, grain sorghum, soybeans, and wheat. Seed Cotton PLC payment decision aid was constructed, aimed at estimating the potential program payments, and Extension Cotton economic summaries related to federal COVID relief for agriculture were released to stakeholder groups throughout the state during the early part of this year. Next, shifting to on-farm variety trials. The objective of this project is to evaluate and communicate the yield, performance, gen turnout, fiber quality of both new varieties that have just come out, as well as benchmarking against cotton varieties that have been out for a while, looking at them specifically under Louisiana conditions. And so why is this important? I mean, obviously, you're going to need unbiased information about how these new cotton varieties are performing, particularly in the Louisiana environment. And everybody knows variety selection is one of the most important decisions, if not the most important decision you can make on your farm. So results from this project are going to provide growers information they can utilize in making variety selection for planting cotton. This year was problematic with hurricanes, and tornadoes. 4 locations were established in Louisiana. 6 other locations were planned, but a tornado hit the warehouse at the Dean Lee Research and Extension Center, and they couldn't get replacement seed fast enough for planting. But the agents in the 4 parishes that the trials were successfully established did harvest the trials. The data has been summarized, and the annual publication has been submitted to the LSU Publishing Department. Going from the on-farm variety trials to the breeder trials, the objectives of this project are to participate in national and regional cotton variety trials and submit appropriate entries from the LSU cotton breeding program. The importance of this is the results from participation in these trials provides a nationally standardized record of the performance of significant commercial varieties. These trials also provide a mechanism to expand multi-location testing that wouldn't otherwise be possible in such a cost-effective manner. It essentially allows Gerald to have access to other breeders' germplasm, other breeders to have access to his germplasm, and to get just a broader view of how these new lines are performing. And this coordinated evaluation across multiple locations provide information on trends in quality, both in quality and yield, that allows researchers to evaluate promising new lines over a wider geographic area. Really amplifies his ability to isolate germplasm that will be beneficial. The uniform data collected from these trials is shared with cooperators and made available to the public, and provides a historical record of the commercial cotton varieties with regard to yield and quality. And this regional breeder test that he participates in allows him to more effectively develop varieties, and provides a mechanism for sharing elite breeding program across the U.S. between breeders. Next is on weed management. The objectives of this project are to demonstrate the efficacy, yields, and returns of weed management programs that utilize multiple mechanisms of action compared to programs that just rely heavily on post-emergence applications of the auxin herbicides. The economics of cotton production is pushing a lot of folks to depend heavily on 2,4-D or dicamba without using additional modes of action. And the importance of this research is to evaluate weed control programs that do utilize multiple mechanisms of action to control weeds, with the primary goal of having higher yields and greater return than programs relying on a single or only a few herbicides. The results from this, the low input strategies using 2 timely post applications in both the list and extend systems maximize control of all weeds evaluated and cotton yield. In both systems, the residual herbicides tested performed similarly. Residual herbicide application timing was not significant to maximizing yield in this particular trial, and the reduced input 2-pass management system, when applied prior to 9-leaf cotton, yielded similarly to more intensive programs consisting of multiple applications. Next is a project looking at the risk of guava root nematode. Surveys of fields in Louisiana for presence of the nematode, and then to support the Nematode Advisory Service for the objectives of this particular project. This Guava Nematode is one of the most damaging of all the root gall causing nematodes. It's been accidentally introduced into Louisiana and could pose a risk to cotton, soybean, and sweet potatoes. So trying to assess information on its distribution and assistance with that identification was needed. Quick results, though it has been introduced into Louisiana twice on contaminated sweet potatoes coming from North Carolina, and cotton is a susceptible host for the nematode. They've surveyed in 2020, and it was not detected in any cotton fields in Louisiana. And thus far, from the best they can determine, it is not established in Louisiana. Shifting from nematodes to diseases, this project is related to this new virus that has showed up in the last few years, CLRDV. The objectives of the project were to evaluate the susceptibility of 4 different lines to CLRDV, and then document symptoms, record virus presence, and any impacts on yield and fiber quality that may have occurred. So this unique strain of CLRDV has been documented across the Southeast. Its incidence is widespread, but the severity of disease and impact have been highly variable. So it's urgent to try to characterize this disease and determine the conditions under which it might cause economic damage to cotton. High-level results. Obvious viral symptoms were not observed throughout the season in the trials. They did see some subtle symptoms that could possibly have been attributed to the virus. But this virus is kind of weird. You can have symptomatic plants that test negative, and you can have asymptomatic plants that test positive. They did find 8 positive tests, 8 positive plants from the various 240 samples. But in all the trials, there were no significant differences in yield among any of the varieties, whether they tested symptomatic or received a treatment or not. Next is on 60-inch row spacing in Louisiana cotton. The objective of this was to evaluate 60 versus 40-inch row spacing for cotton. Why is this important? This demonstration will allow growers to observe cotton planted on either 60 or 40-inch rows over the course of a production season. Then yield comparisons of boll rot ratings at harvest were taken to provide more information on those who might be considering trying 60-inch cotton in the future. Takeaways from this season: a full season variety is needed to fulfill the yield potential of this system. It's really one of the advantages of doing this is y'all's long growing season. Nitrogen rate will need to be slightly higher than a solid cotton planting to provide more energy to fill in the extra row area. PGRs need to be applied at lower rates and more frequently to containing height without sacrificing the lateral growth needed to close the canopy. And due to the increased plant size, defoliant should be applied in larger quantities of water to get better coverage. Moving to irrigation. The objective of this project is to evaluate skip row furrow irrigation compared to all furrows in a non-irrigated control, looking at growth, yield, as well as water and nutrient use efficiency. The overall importance of this is really needing to improve water use efficiency to minimize irrigation costs and decrease the demand on the available water resources. Results from this year show that the skip row irrigation used almost 40% less water compared to all furrow irrigation and produced similar seed cotton yields. Despite differences in irrigation volume, the plants under skip row irrigation use similar amounts of water than that of the plants under the actual plant itself under all furrow irrigation, but it was pulling the water from deeper soil layers than just right at the top. Further data are needed to be collected to better understand this efficacy. And of note, when the tailwater runoff monitoring showed that nutrient loss from irrigation events on either method was relatively small and negligible compared to heavy rain events in the area. On to insect management, there were 2 locations with this project. Really, the objectives are looking to address the immediate pest management needs of Louisiana cotton producers, validate research results in commercial fields, and then get information out to growers through extension publications, meetings, and in-person contacts. Why is this important? The project provides the needed knowledge to improve Louisiana cotton IPM and economic viability. Need continued research and implementation of effective sampling systems and science-based control strategies to make sure that effective, economical, and environmentally sustainable cotton production and IPM can continue in Louisiana. A lot more results came out than this, but this is really all I could fit on one slide. Just covering bollworms, tarnished plant bugs, 2 of the biggest pests out there. So based on these trials, the recommendation out of LSU is that 2-gene cotton should be sprayed on a 20% egg threshold. That's your Bollgard 2s, twin link, and wide strike. And it's really due to the amount of BT resistance that's in the area in bollworm populations. 3-gene cottons are holding up a lot better and did not need spraying very often. There were some cases where they did see some damage, but they're attributing it to low expression, not resistance to VIP. But the management for 3-gene cottons is looking at spraying on 6% fruit injury with the presence of live larvae. Pyrethroids are still strongly discouraged. They're just not working on bollworm alone. Diamides are the most effective control at this point in time. Acephate plus a pyrethroid application for bollworm is discouraged unless you're trying to target some other pest as tarnished plant bug, but it's really not your best management program for bollworms. Looking at tarnished plant bugs, Transform and Acephate are the best performing products. I'm going to apply pre-bloom and during bloom. Pyrethroid performance just wasn't there for tarnished plant bug. Pyrethroid in combination with Biogen and Acephate performed slightly better than their standalone counterparts, but the inclusion of a pyrethroid really did just have limited utility against tarnished plant bug. And take home from that really is rotating modes of action and utilizing robust rates of insecticides with tank mixes of adulticides and diamond help decrease the likelihood of insecticide failures and may minimize the need for several applications after. Next is on evaluating the available commercial foliar fertilizers available. The objective of this was really to see of all of the available commercially available fertilizers, would they have an impact on lint yield and quality under Louisiana farming practices. And so the results of this project are going to characterize the effects of the most frequently used commercial foliar fertilizers and determine, if any, that may help increase yield and improve the production system overall. Results from this are showing that the foliar fertilizers, they may be effective, but only if you're having significant nutrient deficiencies at a particular site. If Louisiana cotton producers provide all the recommended nutrients following the LSU Ag Center recommendations, they may not require any of these foliar projects to maximize yield and nutrient concentrations, which would save a significant amount of cotton production costs. One final project was a cover crop project. This was looking at evaluating the effects of cover crop species and mixtures and the timing of their termination on growth and yields of summer crops and subsequent soil properties. Why is this important? Many fields are largely empty of winter weeds because of the necessity of applying fall residuals to manage glyphosate-resistant weeds and other resistant weeds. And planting winter cover crops is an alternative management system. The winter and spring biomass would protect and improve soil and possibly suppress spring weeds as well. This project is still we're waiting on the results from this, but as soon as they come in, we'll get them out to everybody. So for 2021, we've got a lot of renewals from projects that I just went through. This top list here are projects that are ongoing that will be renewed for 2021. And then we had four additional or 5 additional projects that will be new for 2021, looking at soil applied liquid fertilizers. There were 2 projects of this insect management program. There's still going to be 2 locations, but Tyler Tolles has taken on new responsibility with LSU, and he will be managing one of those locations in addition to SEEB. There's a project using drone-based active sensors for precision applications, a new one on Reniform Nematode, and then another economic project looking at, what if we lose BT cotton, what does that mean in terms of the cost of management, and also looking at a cost comparison of farming BT versus non-BT corn to possibly help reduce some selection pressure from BT cotton. And this is just a reminder, if you want to find more information about the Cotton Incorporated State Support Projects, you can just Google Cotton Inc. State Support. That link will come up. And then check out our Cotton Cultivated website. It's got the weekly weather video from Agrible and Nutrien. And it also has an array of research that we think you'll find valuable to help manage your farm. And with that, I'll take any questions. We also have Matt on the line. So if you have any questions, or if Matt has anything he'd like to say to the growers, I'll turn it over to Matt, or questions from the audience.
To introduce myself to everyone, I'm Matt Foster. I'm the new state cotton specialist with LSU Ag Center, and I just started 2 weeks ago. So the primary focus of my research is going to be on cotton variety testing throughout the state, the official variety trials on the LSU research farms, as well as on-farm variety trials. And I'm also going to be a part of the 60-inch cotton project that we have ongoing at the Northeast Research Station. Also am collaborating with other state cotton specialists for statewide projects, as well as private companies have reached out to me for projects. So I encourage the growers to reach out to me. I look forward to meeting everybody. Like I said, I encourage them to reach out to me to let me know what kind of projects they would like to see done. Thanks.